I hadn't thought about Chris Langley in years. Not since high school, at least, when he used to shove me into lockers, call me every name in the book, and make my already awkward teenage years feel like something I needed to escape from as fast as possible. He was the classic golden boy nightmare, captain of the lacrosse team, girls hanging on his every word, and for some reason, a personal vendetta against me. So when my doorbell rang at 10:47 p.m. on a Thursday, I never expected to see him standing there. He looked ruined, hoodie clinging to him from the rain, hair soaked, eyes red and puffy like he'd been crying for hours. For a second, I didn't even recognize him. The years had changed him, broader shoulders, a rougher edge to his jaw, but still undeniably Chris Langley. "Eli," he said, voice barely above a whisper. I didn't move. He ran a hand through his wet hair, eyes darting past me like he was afraid to look straight at me for too long. "Can I come in?" I stood frozen in the doorway for a beat too long before stepping aside. He walked in slowly, dripping onto the rug, leaving muddy footprints behind him. I shut the door. "What the hell are you doing here?" He turned to me then, and I saw it. Really saw it. Whatever had broken him, it was big. I didn't know where else to go. That didn't answer my question. Not really. But there was something in his voice, shaky, raw, that made me hold off on the snark I was ready to fire back. "Are you in trouble?" He shook his head. "Not that kind. Just, can I sit?" I gestured to the couch. He moved like he was made of wet sand, slow, heavy, like every muscle hurt. I watched him lower himself onto the cushions I usually napped on during weekends, and curl in on himself like a kicked dog. I grabbed him a towel and a bottle of water from the kitchen, mostly to give myself a second to breathe. When I came back, he hadn't moved much. "Thanks," he said when I handed him the towel, but he didn't dry off right away, just clutched it in his lap, knuckles white. I sat across from him, trying to make sense of what was happening. "You want to tell me why my high school bully is sitting on my couch looking like a disaster movie extra?" He flinched. That's when I realized he hadn't come here for comfort. He'd come here because he didn't know where else to fall apart. "I'm sorry," he said suddenly. It caught me off guard. "For high school," he continued, voice thick. "For everything. For being an asshole. I've wanted to say that for a long time. I just never did. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to tell him to shove it. That an apology a decade late didn't erase 4 years of hell. But the other part, the one looking at the guy crumpled on my couch, clearly wrecked, knew something bigger was going on. "What happened?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "My dad died." I blinked. "Shit, I'm sorry." Chris laughed bitterly. "Don't be. He was the reason I became the guy you hated." I sat back. That I didn't expect. Tonight was the funeral. Open casket. Speeches. People pretending he was something he wasn't. His voice cracked. And I just couldn't take it. So I left, walked out in the middle of it. I didn't know him well enough to ask the obvious next question, but apparently I didn't have to. I was walking for like an hour, and then I realized I was 3 blocks from your building. I don't know why I came here. I just remembered that you lived around here, and I needed, he broke off, someone. Anyone. He finally looked at me, eyes glassy. "I'm sorry it had to be you." For some reason, that stung more than it should have. "You want a drink?" I asked. He nodded. I poured us both a whiskey and sat back down. We sipped in silence for a while. The rain had picked up outside, tapping against the windows like a soundtrack to our mutual discomfort. "I didn't know how to be different," he said finally, voice low. "Back then. Everything at home was screaming one thing, and I just copied it, took it out on you. That's not an excuse." "I know," he said, "but it's the truth." I studied him. He looked nothing like the guy who used to snap towels at me in the locker room, or whisper slurs when teachers weren't listening. He looked like someone who'd been trying not to drown for a long time, and finally stopped treading water. "I hated you," I said. "I know. But I stopped." "What?" I shook my head. Nothing. No, he said, sitting forward. Say it. I hesitated. Then, I also noticed when you looked at me like you wanted something you weren't allowed to want. His face froze. I watched his throat work, like he was trying to swallow a grenade. Jesus, he whispered. You knew? I nodded slowly. He covered his face with his hands. I thought I was hiding it. You weren't. Silence again. Thick this time. Loaded. When he looked up, his eyes were wet again. I was so scared. Of what? That you'd see it. That someone else would see it. That I'd see it. And then, quietly, like it hurt to say, I still am. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Then he asked something that knocked the breath out of me. Can I just stay here tonight? And for some reason, maybe because he looked like a ghost of every version of him I ever feared and maybe still wanted, I said yes. I gave him the spare blanket and a pillow, then pointed toward the couch like I hadn't just agreed to let the ghost of my high school trauma sleep under my roof. You can crash here. Thanks, he murmured. He didn't move, though, just sat there, fingers picking at the towel in his lap like he was trying to pull it apart thread by thread. I lingered for a second, expecting him to ask for anything else. But he didn't, so I turned to head to my room. I'd barely taken a step before he spoke again. Eli? I stopped. Yeah? Can you just sit with me for a second? I should have said no. I should have said, you tormented me for years, and now you want comfort? But something about the way he said it, barely above a whisper, like he was afraid I'd say exactly that, kept my feet glued to the floor. I walked back and sat at the other end of the couch. Not close, not touching, but close enough to hear the way his breath shook. He stared straight ahead, toward the dark TV screen. It's stupid, I know. What is? This, being here, needing someone. You. I swallowed. It's not stupid. He glanced over. Feels like it. We sat in silence for a minute. I watched the rain streak the window, the faint streetlights casting ripples across the living room. I could feel him next to me, his body radiating tension like he was trying to keep from splintering in half. Then he said it. You ever feel like you missed your chance to be who you really are? I looked at him. All the time. He nodded slowly like that answer hit somewhere deep. I used to lie awake at night, wondering if I'd ever get to stop pretending, he said, voice tight. And every day I didn't say anything, it just got worse. Until I couldn't tell what was real anymore. Why now? I asked. Why tonight? His lips pressed together. Because tonight I realized I've spent my whole life living for someone else. My dad's expectations. My friends. Bullshit. This version of me I built out of fear and pressure and... He exhaled shakily, and I didn't even get a goodbye. Just a polished casket and a bunch of people lying about who he was. He wiped his face. I just wanted someone who knew the truth. You think I know who you are? He looked at me, and then said something I wasn't ready for. You were the only person I ever wanted to tell. That stopped me cold. He turned away again, like even saying it was too much. But I was too much of a coward. I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say anything. We sat there in the dark, the space between us no longer charged with anger, but with something else, something messier, sadder. And then quietly, like he was trying not to scare it away. Can I ask you something? Yeah. Did you ever think about me back then? I hesitated. Not the way you think, I said. But yeah, I noticed you. I wondered what made you so angry. He let out a breath. You made me angry. I raised my eyebrows. Not because you did anything wrong, he added quickly. Because you were brave in a way I couldn't be. You didn't hide. Not like me. You mean because I was out? He nodded. That wasn't bravery, I said. That was survival. Still, he said, you were the only one I couldn't stop thinking about. I didn't have a response for that. Not one I wanted to admit. Then he shifted closer. Just slightly. I didn't move, His knee brushed mine, and this time, neither of us pulled away. I thought if I hated you loud enough, maybe no one would hear how much I wanted you. My breath caught. And now, he looked at me. I don't want to pretend anymore. His hand found mine. Not aggressive, not pleading. Just there. Warm, real, and I let it stay. We didn't speak again that night. We just sat like that, side by side, on a couch soaked in memory. His fingers wrapped around mine like he was still waiting to be punished, but I didn't pull away. Not this time. I don't know how long we sat there. At some point, I drifted off, half upright, head tilted back against the couch cushion, his fingers still loosely wrapped around mine. It wasn't a deep sleep, more like a daze. One of those quiet, emotionally fried states where your body shuts down but your mind is still wide awake. When I opened my eyes, the room was dim but brighter than before. The rain had stopped. The street outside was wet and shiny under the early morning light. Chris was still next to me, not asleep but quiet, eyes fixed on the dark screen of the TV like it might tell him what to do next. "Did you sleep at all?" I asked, my voice hoarse. He shook his head. Didn't want to. Why? He looked at me, tired. Because waking up would mean it was over. That hit me harder than I expected. "I figured you'd leave while I was asleep," he added. Like, maybe I dreamed this. I let out a soft breath. Well, I didn't. He nodded slowly. Then, after a pause, "Can I ask something?" "You keep asking," I said with a half smile. He gave me a tired grin. "Just one more." "Shoot." He shifted slightly, facing me more fully. "Can I stay a little longer? Like, not just the night. A few days. Maybe a week." I blinked. "Chris." I know it's a lot to ask. But I can pay. I'll help with groceries. He ran a hand through his hair. I don't want to go back to my mom's. She's not exactly ready for the version of me that walked out of that funeral. I studied him for a second. The guy who once made my life hell, who now looked like he had nowhere else to go. "All right," I said. His eyes widened. "Yeah? You're sleeping on the couch, though. Obviously. And you're helping clean." "Fair." I stood up. "And no weird shit?" That made him laugh. A real laugh. One that sounded surprised to even come out of him. "No weird shit," he repeated. "Promise." I made us both coffee. He drank his slowly, sitting at the kitchen table like he wasn't sure if he belonged there, like he was waiting for me to change my mind. But I didn't. Around noon, I handed him a pair of sweatpants and an old t-shirt. "Showers down the hall? Help yourself." He took them carefully, like they were made of glass. "Thanks." He paused at the doorway to the bathroom and looked back. "Eli?" "Yeah?" His voice was quieter now. "Thanks for not telling me to screw off last night." I didn't say anything, just gave a small nod and turned back to the sink. By the end of the second day, things started to feel almost normal. Not in a we're best friends kind of way, but in the way that happens when two people are sharing space and trying not to step on each other's ghosts. He cooked dinner, badly, burned the rice and undercooked the chicken, but I ate it anyway. He insisted on watching some documentary about mountain climbing, even though he was clearly only half interested. When we sat on the couch that night, we didn't touch, but the air between us didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt still, safe. I caught him looking at me more than once. Not in a creepy way, just in that quiet, tentative way of someone who's trying to figure out if they're allowed to want what they want. And every time I caught him, he didn't look away. That night, as I got up to head to bed, he stood too. "Night," I said. He nodded. "Eli?" "Yeah." His voice was low. "Can I hug you?" I froze, but then I nodded. He stepped forward slowly, arms hesitant like he wasn't sure how far to reach. When they wrapped around me, it was careful at first. Then, tighter, warmer. He held me like someone who'd been wanting to for a long time, and I let him. By the fourth day, we'd fallen into a rhythm. Chris made the coffee in the mornings. I cooked in the evenings. Better than him, obviously. He insisted on doing the dishes. He even vacuumed without being asked, which surprised the hell out of me. It was weird, this thing we were doing. Not quite roommates, not quite friends, something in between. We didn't talk about the past much. He didn't bring up high school. I didn't bring up the time he shoved me into a row of lockers, or called me a slur under his breath in gym class. It was like we'd both silently agreed not to dig through that rubble. At least not yet. But it lingered. Like when he walked too close behind me in the kitchen and I flinched, even though I didn't mean to. Or when I'd catch him watching me with this look that was half regret, half longing. One night we were watching a movie on the couch. Something dumb and loud. Explosions, bad one-liners, a total brain-dead pick from Chris that I actually kind of liked. Halfway through, I got up to grab water. When I came back, he was sitting different, shoulders tense, hands knotted together in his lap. I handed him a glass. "You good?" He didn't take it right away. "I keep thinking I'm gonna screw this up," he said. I sat down slowly. "Screw what up?" "This," he said, motioning vaguely between us. "Whatever this is." I set the glass on the coffee table. "Chris, you've been here 4 days. You haven't screwed anything up." He looked at me then. Really looked. "That hug the other night," he said. "That meant a lot to me." I nodded. "It meant a lot to me too." His voice dropped. "I wanted to kiss you." The silence that followed that sentence wasn't just silence. It was seismic. He stared at me, eyes wide, like he expected me to throw something, or laugh or tell him to get out. But I didn't. Instead, I said, "Why didn't you?" Because I didn't know if I was allowed. I leaned back slightly. "What would have happened if you did?" His answer came fast. "You would have pushed me away." "And now?" He didn't answer. I watched him struggle with it, whatever was twisting around inside him. Then, after what felt like a century, he whispered, "I still want to." My pulse jumped. I tried to play it cool. "Why?" He blinked. "Because I think about you every time I'm not looking at you." That knocked the air out of me. I swallowed hard. "You're not the guy the first used to know." "I hope not, but you're still figuring this out." "Yeah," he said, "I am." I nodded slowly. "Then we take it slow." He looked relieved. "Okay." And then, soft, unsure, "Can I hold your hand again?" I held it out before I could think twice. And this time, there was no hesitation. After that night, something shifted. We didn't talk about what happened, about the hand-holding, about the way Chris looked at me like I was a safe place he'd never had before. But the air between us was different. Charged. Not tense, but expectant. Like we were both waiting for the next beat in a song we'd just realized we were dancing to. Chris got comfortable faster than I expected. He started showing up in my t-shirts, leaving dishes in the sink with notes like, "I swear I'll clean this, don't hate me," and stealing my hoodie when he got cold. He wasn't trying to impress me. If anything, he was trying not to be in the way, but in doing so, he was becoming a part of the place. And somehow, that didn't bother me. One morning, I walked into the kitchen half asleep, and there he was, barefoot, shirtless, flipping pancakes. He turned and smiled, spatula in hand. "Made you breakfast." Thought I'd earned my keep. I stared at him, at the tan line at his waist, the scar I'd never seen just under his ribs, the messy hair, and that damn sleepy grin. And for the first time in years, I forgot how much he used to scare me. All I could think was, this is dangerously nice. "You can't make me like you with pancakes," I said. He flipped one onto a plate and slid it toward me. Too late. I sat at the table, chewing slowly while he poured syrup and leaned against the counter watching me. "What?" I asked. He shrugged. "You have a cute face when you're grumpy." I rolled my eyes. "You're getting way too bold." He smiled. "Maybe I'm just finally being honest." That night, we stayed up late again. same couch, same movie background noise. Except this time, I let my leg rest against his. Not a full lean, just enough to feel the heat between us. He didn't move away. At some point, I must have dozed off. When I woke up, the movie was over and his arm was around my shoulder. Not possessive, not invasive, just there. I shifted slightly and he stirred. "You awake?" I whispered. "MMHM," he murmured. "You should go to bed." "I don't want to." "Why not?" He was quiet for a beat. Then, "Because this is the first time in years I've felt okay." I didn't know what to say, so I leaned my head against his chest and closed my eyes again. The next few days were quiet, but not in a bad way. We moved around each other easily, sharing meals, trading playlists, passing each other in the hall in boxers and sleep-rumpled hair like we'd always lived that way. But underneath it, I felt it building, like something unsaid waiting at the edge of every conversation. On the 7th night, I found Chris on the balcony with a beer in one hand, and his hoodie pulled up like he was trying to disappear into it. The city lights reflected off his eyes in that way that made him look younger, softer. "You good?" I asked, stepping out next to him. He nodded, but it didn't feel honest. "Just thinking." I leaned on the railing beside him. "About?" He hesitated. "About how I used to be the last person you'd ever let this close to you." "You still might be," I said, nudging his arm. "I'm not exactly easy to crack open." He looked over at me. "You're not what I expected," I smirked. "In what way?" "I thought you'd be angry. Cold. Maybe even hate me forever." "I thought I would too." He watched me for a second, then set the beer down and turned to face me. "But you're not." "I'm not," I agreed. Then he took a step closer. "Why?" I swallowed. "Because you're not the same guy." "What if I still am? A little?" I met his eyes. "Then you're the kind of guy who's trying, and that's more than most." He took another step. Our chests nearly touched now. The air between us suddenly warmed despite the breeze. "Can I kiss you?" he asked. It wasn't desperate. It wasn't even particularly smooth. It was careful, like he was afraid the answer would destroy him. I didn't answer with words. I leaned in. And when our lips met, slow, unpracticed, uncertain, I felt everything from 10 years ago wash away. He kissed me like he was apologizing with every breath, and I let him. The kiss didn't last long, but it lingered. When we finally pulled apart, Chris kept his forehead against mine like he wasn't ready to let the moment go. His breath was shallow, and his voice came out rough. "I've wanted that for so long I started thinking I made it up." I looked at him. "You didn't." We didn't talk much after that. We didn't need to. We just stood there, pressed close in the soft hush of the night. The city humming below us like it had no idea what was happening on my tiny balcony. Eventually, we went back inside. I shut the door behind us and turned off the kitchen light. He looked at me in the dark. "Do you want me to sleep on the couch?" I paused. "No," I said. "Not tonight." He followed me down the hall without another word. In my bedroom, things moved slow. We didn't strip down or rush anything. We just climbed under the covers, side by side, fully clothed, but somehow more bare than we'd ever been. He reached for my hand under the blanket and found it without asking. I turned to face him. The glow from the hallway light lit just enough of his face for me to see the way he was watching me. "This okay?" he whispered. I nodded. "Yeah." He shifted closer, and I let him pull me in until his chest was against mine, our legs tangled in the blankets. It was warm, solid, real, and I wasn't scared anymore. Not of him, not of what this was. He held me like someone who finally stopped running. I held him like someone who finally stopped guarding. At some point, his hand brushed through my hair and settled at the back of my neck. I tucked my face into the curve of his shoulder. "Still want to go slow?" he murmured. "Yeah," I said, "but don't stop holding me." "I won't." And he didn't. We fell asleep like that. Quiet, breathing in sync, the years between us shrinking until they were nothing more than shadows on the wall. The next morning, I woke up before him. I stayed still for a while, just listening to his breathing, feeling the weight of his arm draped over my waist, the solid warmth of him behind me. He didn't stir. He just held on like letting go might snap him back to wherever he'd come from. And I didn't move. I wasn't used to this. To softness, to waking up next to someone who wasn't trying to escape it. Eventually, I rolled onto my back. He shifted beside me, eyes blinking open, hair sticking up on one side. He looked at me like he wasn't sure if I was real. "Morning?" I said. "Morning," he echoed. A beat passed. "I didn't dream it?" he asked. "Nope." He gave me the smallest, dopiest smile. "Good." We stayed like that for a while, talking quietly, trading sleepy touches that didn't go anywhere. Didn't need to. Just skin brushing skin in a way that felt new and familiar at the same time. At one point, he traced a line down my arm with his fingertip and said, "I'm not good at this." At what? Any of it. Talking, feeling, showing up. "You're here," I said. He looked at me. "I want to stay here, if that's something you want." I didn't answer right away, because I'd been so sure for so long that Chris Langley was someone I had to get over, move on from, prove something to. And now here he was, messy, flawed, quietly brave in a way he never was before, asking me for a future. "I want that," I said, "but I need honesty. I need patience. I need more than one good night." "You'll have it," he said, "all of it, or I'll earn it." And for the first time, I believed him. 3 months later, he still hadn't left. He found a part-time job nearby, took over making breakfast most mornings, started calling my mom Mrs. D like he'd always been in my life. Sometimes, he'd still flinch at old memories, apologize for things I'd already let go of, but he never stopped showing up. One evening, I found him on the couch, flipping through a photo album I didn't remember leaving out. It was high school yearbook stuff, me with braces, bad hair, trying too hard to disappear. He looked up and said, "I can't believe how blind I was." I sat beside him. "You were scared." He shook his head. "I was a coward." "But you're not now." He closed the album and turned to me. "You saved me." "No," I said. "You just finally stopped hiding." He leaned in, pressed his forehead against mine, and whispered, "Thank you for letting me come back." I kissed him. Soft, slow, forgiving. And for the first time in a long time, it didn't feel like a second chance. It felt like a beginning.